franchise tag preview show. It is wildcard weekend. It's 18 weeks of what we've all been waiting for, a straight knockout competition. So here we are, preview show. There's a lot less games than what we're used to. So, not sure how long it'll last, but give it a go. See what info you've got.
I'm sure you've got lots to talk about being a New York Giants fan, and you've got all this information on all the other teams. So
yeah, being the only neutral in it now,
exactly.
I can pick and choose who I want to support, really, can't I?
Exactly.
Yeah, you've got to stay faithful to those Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, damn right.
So we'll get straight into it. Game one. There's no boring games in wildcard weekend. They all look interesting. And the first one up is the Las Vegas Raiders at the Cincinnati Bengals. It's on at 9:30 UK time. What are you saying?
Yeah, I've kind of been with the Bengals all the way through, haven't I? So I can't really jump off the bandwagon now. I actually feel like they're the better team. I do feel like they're the stronger team in this. I think it'll be quite an interesting one. I don't think it'll be quite as exciting as what everyone thinks it's going to be. I don't think it's going to be quite so much heavy passing and lots of touchdowns. The one thing I have done, there's a bet that's gone out for the two games today. I've done Joe Mixon 4-5 as part of the double. The one thing that I noticed is that the Raiders don't blitz very often. They tend to keep quite a lot of defense back in the secondary. That's going to be a bit of a problem for like Chase and Higgins if they start double marking Chase. That's going to be an issue for the Bengals. So I think Mixon's going to see quite a lot of action tonight. Having said all that, I do feel like the Bengals are just a cut above, and that despite everything that the Raiders have gone through, and they've gone through a lot this season, I do feel like this is probably going to be where it comes to a bit of an end.
Yeah, I mean, they've already faced off against each other this season in week 11. Bengals took it then, 32-13?
Yeah.
I think if you can take any highlights from that and what happened, the Bengals were very run heavy in that game and it seemed to work for them. So I think, if anything, you go as far to say that the Bengals are probably one of the most balanced offenses in the league currently. They've got a quarterback who's over 4,000 yards, a running back that's over 1,000 yards, two receivers over 1,000 yards. That's a real balanced offense, and it really opens up the playbook for you when you're going into games because you've got that dynamic. You're not one-dimensional. You're not a run first or just deep balls or whatever that you see from a lot of the other teams. So I think that's going to play in their advantage. They've both got the same record at 10-7, but the Bengals rested everyone virtually in that last game, so you can't really take that into account. They played some very similar teams in the stretch. Sort of 3 of the last 5 won for the Bengals, 4 of the last 5 for the Raiders. So they're pretty even match coming into this game. But yeah, I think I agree with you. I think, like I said, they're very balanced. Their run defense is fantastic. They're a bit more sloppy in the secondary.
Yeah.
But having said that, like I said, they seem more structured. They seem to be playing nicer football, whereas the Raiders, I think, are sort of living on a prayer a little bit and sort of winging it each week that they play a game.
Yeah, it does kind of feel a little bit like that. I mean, I feel that they've done really well. This is like I've always said, and I know that it's not an uncommon thing to have a bit of a go against the Raiders. They have this ability to lose games that they should win, but they have done well. I mean, they've done well to get a 10-7 record. They've done well against some of the teams that they've played. I think they've shown that they do deserve to be there, especially given everything that's gone on. And you can't sort of underestimate that because, to lose your coach, to lose one of your main young wide receivers, to lose some pieces on the defense for other things as well. I mean, it's huge to lose these guys. I think, is it Besicia? I think his name is the head coach there. I think he probably deserves a shot at having another year at this. I think he's shown, and or at least he's managed to maintain what was going on there, and I feel like he's done quite well, and he deserves it. I mean, they've been pretty good really this year. But having said all of that, they are coming up against a team who, like you say, they've managed to rest their players last week, or the main guys were rested last week. They have looked a very strong offense, and I think it's going to be tough for them to get past it. Another bet I did see is -5.5 to the Bengals at 10-11. I think that's another one. There isn't anything particularly big in this game to go for, but I feel like the Bengals are going to be strong enough to get through it.
Yeah, I agree. I think they've, like I said, I think they're just a little bit more structured, and I think that helps going into the playoffs. I also said I think Joe Burrow's got that edge when it comes to going into big games, that he just produces something a bit more special, a bit more fight. Not saying Derek Carr doesn't, because he has got the same ability, but he hasn't got the players around him like Burrow has.
I have to say, completely sold on Burrow and just everything about him. I think he's been great this season. It's probably part of the reason why I've been continually backing them. It's just, I think he's shown that he is just a completely different class to so many quarterbacks, and also so many quarterbacks that have come out of the draft as well. It's like everyone was very much like, is it just one season at LSU and that's it? But he's shown how good he can be, and just, you love the personality of him as well. That's the other thing that doesn't get picked up. But the guy in the locker room smoking the cigar and all that when he's celebrating, great. You want to see that more often. That's what you want to see from players. So yeah, completely sold on the Bengals and think they'll do well.
Yeah, I said when we did a preview of the draft that he went into, me and Freddie spoke about him. He didn't compete in the combine, but he did all the press coverages and all the interviews. Yeah. And I said to Fred, the main thing I took away from him at the combine is how well he talks in front of the media, and how much like positivity and sort of like that counts so much for being a franchise quarterback. I think those we shy over those like attributes a little bit when it comes to talent, but I think they all pay into how to change the face of a franchise like he has. So yeah, fingers crossed for them. I'll be supporting the Bengals in that one as well. We move on to the next game. It's a real interesting clash. It's one that everyone's probably looking forward to. It's round 3. It's 1-1 at the minute. It's New England Patriots, Buffalo Bills. It's on at 1:15 UK time.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a really interesting game. There's been a lot of chat about the weather and it being very cold. It means nothing. It really doesn't. I mean, if it starts getting really windy, then you've got a problem. But if it's just cold, I mean, it's two teams that play in the cold all the time. It's ridiculous. Personally, I although it's really difficult to count out the Patriots. And it's one of them things where, because it's Bill Belichick and the scheme that they play, you always feel like you should be on their side when it comes to any one-off game. But I feel like the Bills have they've got a bit more about them, and they're just that little bit stronger. One thing that I did see, and this is something that throughout history you've always had to do, is you have to kind of, the first time that these quarterbacks are playing in a playoff game, it's a big thing. It's a massive game for them. And even though they've played big games at college, and obviously to get to the Super Bowl, they've had to play big games, it's still a step up again. And Mac Jones, I think, might struggle because of that. In the bet that I put out, I've put Josh Allen anytime. I think that he's a good shout to get a touchdown in this one. Both teams are really, really strong defensively against the pass. I think they're the number 1 and 2 in the whole league. But against the run, the Patriots do struggle a bit. They're 22nd against the run. Now, we all know that the Buffalo run is not brilliant, but Josh Allen, I think, will get opportunities near the goal line to run one in. Other than that, as a sort of a little bit of a bigger price, because Allen's 15-8, but a bigger price, Dawson Knox, I think he's a big red zone target. He always has been for Josh Allen, so he's one that's worth having a look at. But yeah, I think that the Bills, they're just that bit better, and although they've not been as good as what they were last year, I think they're good enough to win this one.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one, like you said. Unless the goalposts are like this angle again, like they were played, I don't think weather is an excuse. Equally, mainly on the show, I've always slammed the Bills' run game, but over the last sort of 3 or 4 weeks, Singletary has really stepped up. He's been producing sort of 80 to 100 yards over the last sort of 4 weeks, bar one game. And then when you were looking at anything prior to that, they were struggling to get over 50 yards on the ground from one player. So he's really stepped up in that aspect. And I think that's going to play massively and heavily into freeing up Josh Allen, and Josh Allen being able to run the ball too. So the Patriots have listed about 12 players on their injury report. I don't know whether it's Bill Belichick's mind games starting already. But there's a lot of key names in there on the defense that are questionable, and a big name on the offensive line with Isaiah Wynn as well, which he helps massively in the run game. And as you said, Mac Jones has sort of dropped off a little bit over the back end of the season. He's not been as productive as what he was at the start. There's a lot of youngsters on the offense for me at that Pats team that haven't been there and done it in the playoffs consistently like the old Patriots have. I think the defense has still got some of those names. But the Bills, this is sort of like their third, fourth stab at playoffs. So they've been there, they've done it. They've not brought in a lot of youngsters and new names. They've managed to keep a lot of the core together that did it last year. So yeah, for me, I think although Belichick's been there and done it, I think the experience in the playoffs pays off when you come up again in a game like this. And I think the Bills have just got the more experienced guys that have been there and done it this year than the Pats have. I think it's going to be really close. It was a tough one for me to call because I favoured the Pats to do well in the playoffs, but something's just drawing me towards the Bills and how strong they are. You know, number one defense, that offense is great. They haven't had any trouble getting the ball in the end zone, throwing it. So yeah, I'm going to stick with the Bills in this one as well. They've got, it's got to be their year, really, hasn't it, to do well. They've got to produce more than what they have done.
Well, I do feel that it's a big game for McDermott. You know, this was something that I was just listening to another podcast about, and they were talking about who in the playoffs, in the wildcard rounds, the coaches that really need the win, sort of thing. And I think McDermott is one of them, because they have sort of like, they've done okay in the playoffs, but they have struggled. But they're a team that are win now. You know, they're in that mode to win now, and it does feel like if they can't get it done, then that's going to be a problem. I'm not saying they're going to sack him, but it's like it is something that does need maybe some sort of like thought about, because you do have to question why it's not happening a little bit if they can't. I think they'll get past the Patriots as well. Like you said, Josh Allen, I think Singletary, it's going to make it more for him to be able to rush. This is what you saw in week 16 when they played against them. He got 64 yards rushing that week. I think you're going to be looking at a similar thing again today.
Yeah, it's interesting when you talk about the Bills and the back office team, because they're always a team every year that's talked about sort of getting gutted, and all of their coordinators and presidents and everyone scouts all ending up at other teams. So it'd be nice if the current team that they've got, and Daboll, if he stays, you know, it'd be nice for them to try and get a bit more wins under their belt for them, because they have done so well to get to this point. So yeah, we move on to the Sunday fixtures. First one up. I think this is going to be an interesting game still. I don't think it's going to be a whitewash that people may expect. It's the underdogs, the unexpected team in the playoffs. It's the Philadelphia Eagles at the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. It's a 6 o'clock kickoff. They already met up in week 6 of the regular season. It was a close matchup. It was 28-22 to the Bucks. But what are you saying in Wildcard Weekend?
Yeah, we were talking about this game on Tuesday night, me and Freddie, and we were sort of saying that we feel that it's going to be a lot closer than what most people think it's going to be. It feels like it resembles the Bucks game last year when they played Washington, but we feel that the Eagles will be a lot closer than what Washington ended up with there. Personally, I've kind of like grown to, I wouldn't say like the Eagles, but I suppose admire what they're doing. Where I think they've worked out a game plan. They've got this really strong run game, but the problem is they're going up against, I think, the number 3 rushing defense, which is going to be a big problem for them. So I feel like that's going to be something that is going to be a massive issue, and because of that, I just feel the Bucks at home with Brady. Okay, Antonio Brown's not there, Chris Godwin's not there, but we've seen in the past it doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter who it is. He will make them a higher quality offense, whatever. And so I think because of that, I've got to go for the Bucks as in to win. One thing I did notice, the Eagles have been appalling against the tight ends. They really have. I always go on about Gronk. He's 13 to 10 anytime. Over 58.5 yards in the game is 10 to 11. I would be surprised if that didn't come off. The other thing, bigger price if you want it, Cameron Brate. We've seen that Brady likes Cameron Brate as well. Tight end, 15 to 4. It's not a massive price, but it's a decent one. I feel like the only other thing that I was looking at in this game was that I feel that the Eagles are not going to be able to run all the time. They're going to have to pass the ball a little bit. I've always said all the way through this season that Jalen Hurts' safety blanket is basically Dallas Goedert. It always has been. He's 11 to 10 for over 4.5 receptions. I think that will probably come off. And if you want him at a bigger price, he's 7 to 2 for anytime touchdown. So I think there are a few things in that one, but I have to say, I think the Bucks are probably the strongest now.
Yeah, it's a perfect time if you're an Eagles fan to go up against the Bucks because they have got so many injuries, especially at wide receiver. I think we've heard that even Cyril Grayson, who was stepped up at the back end of the season in with everyone else missing, I think he's even out. I think Ronald Jones is supposed to be out. So yeah, definitely your bet on the tight ends. They're going to be peppering those tight ends. They're the 2 most experienced people they're going to be able to target. They've got injuries in the secondary as well. I think Sean Murphy-Bunting's sort of carrying a bit of an injury. So yeah, like you said, the Eagles, they're playing with heart. They're playing as a team. They've all got each other's back. I think, if anything, you haven't heard of any drama coming out of that camp for the whole year. It seems like they've all just got each other's backs and are just pushing forward. And that's always nice to carry into the playoffs. We've seen lots of teams go into the playoffs. I mean, my Giants have been one of them. They go in as a sort of wild card team, and they've just managed to push through the teams that have played better all year than them. So yeah, I wouldn't write them off. It was close last time when the Bucks were a lot healthier, but you can't write Brady off, can you? It doesn't matter what receivers he's got in there. He'll make do with them. And yeah, they've got a fantastic O-line that's going to protect him. So it's going to be a tough match for the Eagles, but I'm gonna stick with the Buccaneers as well. There is still some experience on there. It's not completely whitewashed. They've just lost a couple of big names, but yeah, I'm sticking with the Bucks in this one. I think it's just one too big for the Eagles, and hopefully they, as a Giants fan, I shouldn't really be saying this, but hopefully they can continue what they've built at the Eagles, because it has been nice to watch for a neutral. So yeah, fingers crossed for them.
Can I just say the one thing with the Eagles that I feel like, I mean, we've both gone for the Bucks, and this is a reason as to why we've both gone for the Bucks. As great as the Eagles have been, especially in the second half of the season, they actually haven't won a game against a team with a winning record, and that I feel kind of almost makes you feel like, yeah, you do have to kind of downplay it a little bit, because they haven't played that many great teams. And so I think that's probably why we're both going for the Bucs as well. So.
Yeah, it's very easy to buy into the hype of teams that are building and progressing well. But when they, like you say, when they haven't come up against the big teams, it kind of like shadows it a little bit of what they've done. We saw that in a couple of the other teams as well, going into the back end of the season. We move on to the next game. It's the San Francisco 49ers at the Dallas Cowboys, the 9:30 kickoff.
Yeah, I think this is the only one that I'm going away from the home team, to be honest. I just feel that the 49ers are just, I don't know, it's a weird team. Everything kind of tells you not to back them because of the quarterback and just the way he plays. And I'm not particularly keen on him, and I just don't think he's good enough to get them a Super Bowl. But one thing I have always said is he's good enough to win them playoff games and get them through games like this because of the system and how they play. The Cowboys are just, they're one of them teams. They always throw in a clanger at one point or another. You always get one. It just happens. And I think because of that, I feel like I have to go for the 49ers, because even, we saw against the Rams last week, even when they were down and they were 17 points down, they still have that ability to keep going with the game plan, keep doing the same thing. Eventually it will work. And it just seems to. The Cowboys they've got a great offense. We've been saying it for a while. They've got great weapons on that offense. The defense, we were very much like, at the beginning of the season, we're very, very good. But I was having a look and seeing what's happened in the last few weeks. They're currently now 16th against the run, 20th against the pass. So that great defense that was putting them up quite high has dropped quite a bit. The other thing is, when it comes to betting on this game, one stat that I did read, they are the worst defense against inline tight ends. There is no tight end that lines up with the O-line as much as George Kittle. I think you can have numerous bets on Kittle. You've got 51.5 yards. I think he'll get it. Over 4.5 receptions. Both of them are 10 to 11. And then Kittle 7 to 5 anytime touchdown. And if you like the 49ers, they're the underdog in this. So, they're giving you +3 as well at 20 to 21. Or if you just fancy him to win, then they're 29 to 20. I like the 49ers here. I think they're gonna, that defense is so good, it's gonna get them through a lot of trouble. And I think that it'll probably be too strong for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at this game, you're looking at the bigger picture. I think it all depends on how fit Trent Williams, Elijah Mitchell, and Jimmy G are going into this game, because those three names are going to be crucial to them getting over the line this one. Because I'm with you. I like the 49ers in this game as well. Dallas, for me, they're another one like the Eagles. They haven't really played anyone other than Arizona in this back half of the season. They've been playing Washington, the Giants. They've been playing all of their own division, and those games just weren't a challenge for them. And in the middle of the season, when they did play some of the challenge teams, that's when they struggled, and people started to question whether the Cowboys were the real deal. Also, I think we're being shadowed by the stat of the interceptions that Trayvon Diggs has had, because I saw a stat recently that apparently he's one of the worst for giving up yardage in man coverage. So you're rolling the dice there. He might intercept it because he's got more chance than anybody else, but he's giving up a lot of yards, and it's not. I don't think their secondary is what we all thought when at the start of the year, when we were going, hang on, this isn't. It still gives up the yards there, and like I said, the run game for San Francisco is going to have to get off to a quick start in order for Jimmy G to be able to continue to push through this to get the win. That you saw what they could do against the Rams. You know, they were both playing for that game. It wasn't, the Rams hadn't given up. So I think that gives you a great confidence going up against what's predicted to be one of the top seeded teams for the Super Bowl in the Rams, and going in there and beating them. So they're going to be full of confidence. They've got the rest of their team back. We spoke about this over the last few weeks. The 49ers have managed to get healthy at the right time with everyone else.
Yeah.
And I've had my question marks over Dallas all year. I've took my hat off to them and commended them when they've been good and when they were going to be talked about in the discussion of can they make the Super Bowl. But I'm not fully sold on them. There's been games in there where they've really, really lost. So I don't think. Have we lost Adam? Is he still there? We've lost him. Yeah, I mean, it's going to probably sound a bit biased coming from a Giants fan talking down the Cowboys, considering they've done so much better than us this year. But I think there's been a decline in Ezekiel Elliott. I don't think he's been as good since he first joined. I think Dak, although is proving to keep his doubters quiet with a bounce back games and things like that, I think he's got a ceiling, and I think we've seen him reach it. So can he carry them through the playoffs? There's some tough teams to beat in there. I'm not sure. And San Francisco, they're another team they've been in the playoffs with a lot of the players that they've currently got. They've managed to keep a lot of them. They've come back every single year. They're competitive every year. Also, me and Adam spoke about this last week, I believe. They were talking about players playing for their contracts and playing for showcasing themselves to another team in the future. Now, before the season started, we spoke about the drafting of Trey Lance, and there was a big discussion on the show of what happens to Jimmy G. And I brought up the topic of, you know, if he goes out there this year, has a great season, gets them to a Super Bowl, do you sort of fold on him and say, you know, we've got Trey Lance now, we're not bothered, you're out? Or do you stick with Jimmy G and continue and leave Trey Lance on the sideline? So there's going to be those question marks. Or Jimmy G might, like I said, they might have plans to bring Trey Lance in and have him as the starter sooner than we think. So Jimmy G could be playing to prove that he can get it done in the playoffs. And another team that is looking to push and go to a Super Bowl will have the confidence in him that he is good enough to take teams through the playoffs to a Super Bowl. So I think he plays with confidence. I think he's a great leader, which we've said about Joe Burrow. I think that counts a lot because although he's not the most talented, he's not your Patrick Mahomes, he's not your Josh Allen. I think he's still, like I said, that leader quality pays massive in there. Yeah, he's back. I was just saying, Adam, I feel like Jimmy G might be playing for a contract somewhere else in the future and proving that he's a good enough quarterback. You know, if they're going to buy into Trey Lance and move forward with Trey Lance, it's his chance now to produce the goods, to show another team that might be vying for the playoffs that he's good enough to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of feel like he's already done that a little bit in the 2019 season, but I suppose just to the fact that he can still do it. You know, they could come out and go, oh, yeah, you did it once, it was a fluke, it was the system. But if you can do it for a second time, then it shows that you have the ability to do a bit more, which is, no bad thing. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. You have to think that they're going to move forward with Trey Lance, because otherwise, why did you pick him? You have to feel that's the case. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. When Lance has come in, he hasn't been that great, but he has shown bits, and you sort of think with a bit more, because bear in mind he missed a lot of time in college because of COVID and different things that were going on. So I think he's going to need a bit of time. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see what happens there. It's difficult with Jimmy G. I just don't think he's good enough to win the whole thing. That's the thing. And I just think that he needs it. You kind of want, it's almost like, because I feel like that, I want him to do well in a weird kind of way, but I just don't think he's quite got it, and that's a shame. But the other thing with this game is that you do feel like with everything, we've had lots of coaching changes, lots of things happening. The Cowboys, I mean, Mike McCarthy, what a coach to have to take you into a playoff game. It's a bit of a with Kellen Moore just sitting there waiting to take the job. It does kind of feel a little bit like a must-win one for him. So I don't know, but I think he might struggle in this one.
Yeah, if not, someone else is going to snap him up. He's been on the talks of lots of the teams that have recently just fired all their head coaches to get him in and interview him. He's one of those offensive coordinators that everyone's now saying offensive coordinators are the new head coach ability. It's not the defensive coordinators, and he's one of the most exciting going at the minute. So yeah, he's going to be on the list for everyone to be interviewing. We'll move on to the game that the quarterback doesn't even think his team have got a chance. Whether that's a true original statement, but it's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Big Ben's probably could be his last ever game at the Kansas City Chiefs.
What do you mean could be? So
he's going to play again, isn't he?
So on the last episode that we did on Tuesday night, Freddie asked me, do we have any hope whatsoever? And the answer is no, and it's still no. You don't have any hope at all, I'm afraid. It's not. I think this could be quite painful to watch for him. The biggest problem here, the Pittsburgh Steelers in the last 8 games, in the first half, they have averaged 4 points in the last 8 games. They are now coming up against one of the strongest offenses in the league, away from home, with a quarterback who can barely move. It doesn't bode well for them. The one positive that I have for them is that they're going into it, and I think the reason that this is what they're saying, they have nothing to lose, nothing at all. It's a complete free hit for them. Roethlisberger is going to be throwing that ball all over the place because he probably knows that chances are it will be his last game that he's going to play. The one thing I would say, the Chiefs defense, it did improve, but it's still not great. It still struggles a bit. It's 21st against the run, 27th against the pass, so it's not brilliant. The Steelers, as we know, the worst team against the run. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is out, and also Williams has got a toe injury, and they don't know if he's going to play or not. I think that kind of leaves them with Gore and McKinnon. I saw last night that McKinnon was 13-5 anytime. I think that's a decent price for McKinnon, who showed as well in the last game. He can do stuff. He can still play. He got a touchdown. So I like that. I like Kansas City -7.5 on the first half line at 20-21. I think, like I say, the Steelers don't score points in the first half. The Chiefs score points all the time, so that's not going to be a problem. The only thing that I do like on the side of the Steelers is Pat Freiermuth. He's the only one that I really like. Over 3.5 receptions is 5-6, so I think that's potentially a decent price for that. But yeah, I mean, it's not the most exciting of games, I'm afraid. Out of all of them, this is probably the one that it feels like it's going to be a bit of a foregone conclusion. Don't think I'll be staying up that late to watch it. But yeah, I think the Chiefs will win it relatively comfortably.
Yeah, it's going to go one way or another, isn't it? It's going to be a thrashing, or Pittsburgh are going to somehow manage the upset of the season. They met as recently as week 16, and Kansas City blew them out then. So not much has changed since then in terms of injuries and players coming back. I think big news for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Najee Harris is carrying an injury. He's going to play. He's going to be fit enough, but little niggles are always going to play into it, considering he has been the main part of their offense all season. So, yeah, this should be a comfortable win for Kansas. They've managed to, at that point in the season where their offense was poor, their defense was poor, they've managed to really turn it around and look like a Super Bowl team again. Whereas we've not seen much from the Steelers really at all. They're getting off to really slow starts. They're trying to produce all the goods in the back end of the game, and that's not the sensible thing to do against Kansas, because the head coach is fantastic. The players they've got are all very experienced, very, very experienced. They're going to know how to manage this game well. If they get off to a good start and get in the lead by halftime, it'll be done and dusted. If they'll just play out the clock, and it'd be really tough for Pittsburgh to get back in that, I think. But it's going to be an interesting one to watch. Like you say, I think you're right. I think you're going to see them trying absolutely everything they can. And you can see some interesting plays. But Pittsburgh have got a lot of good youngsters, a lot of good wide receivers and things like that. So, this isn't the last time we're going to see them in the playoffs. And this is they're going to drop off the scene. I think we'll see them back again. But yeah, I think Kansas City are too strong for them in this one.
Yeah, I mean, Pittsburgh are a strange side, because obviously, it, in a weird kind of way, it feels very similar to Denver. Like, they've got all the pieces around them, but they haven't got the quarterback. And it just feels like with Big Ben, he's held on for too long. It's just like he probably should have gone last year. He's held on for another year. It's not really worked out. It's been, I mean, they've got to the playoffs, but I mean, they've really had to scrape through to get to that point. I think if they could bring in a good quarterback, and it doesn't even have to be a quarterback that is amazing either. It could be like, I mean, I said ages ago, I think someone like Derek Carr would be fine there. If you could get someone like that, I mean, it's going to be difficult because obviously the Raiders aren't going to give him away for nothing. But someone like that, I feel, would be a bit of a positive choice to make. And unfortunately, I mean, there was a point against the Ravens right at the end, that final drive, and Big Ben had the ball and he looked like he was going to run. I saw it and thought, oh my, is he genuinely going to try and run here? And he just can't move. His legs are done. And it's just like, it's quite sad to see, really, because he's such a good quarterback and has been over the years. But yeah, I mean, the Steelers aren't, just because if he retires, that won't be the end of them by any stretch. But for this game, I think it's going to be an uphill battle for them. I think they need a minimum of 10 points at halftime, minimum. And if you're averaging 4 in your last 8 games, I mean, it's going to be tough.
Other than the rumours of, obviously, there's been a lot of Aaron Rodgers rumours to Pittsburgh. I've recently heard a lot of rumours that Kirk Cousins might be an option. And I think he could do a job there. You've seen what he's done with good receivers at the Vikings. I think it's the defense that have let the Vikings down a little bit, but hey ho.
They just need someone who's a bit more mobile.
Another one that a question I'd like to ask you: what has happened to Tyreek Hill over the last 4 or 5 weeks? He's kind of seemed to have dropped off the face of the planet.
It's been strange, isn't it? He does seem to have done it. It feels like I do wonder if a lot of this is actually not so much scripted, but I do wonder if Mahomes is kind of thinking more about what was working previously. At the beginning of the season, it was lots of like big passes, long passes that were just sailing over people's heads and not going anywhere. He seems to have changed that in the second half of the season. It's a lot more sort of 10, 15-yard passes at most. It doesn't really work for Hill unless Hill's in the backfield. So I do wonder if that's what's happened. The other thing is that, especially last week, Hardman suddenly turned up. It's taken about 2 years, but he suddenly woke up. Byron Pringle has arrived. Demarcus Robinson, these other guys, they do have other guys that can do it. So I think because of that, maybe you're seeing a little bit less go into Hill because of that. Having said all of that, I still think that you would want to be sticking 2 defenders on him every time, because if you let him go, then it's all over. So
yeah, it's nice to see some of those other names stepping up, because in the past I've always marked them down as the weakness for Kansas, but they have really stepped up at this back end of the season. So yeah, I think we're both sticking with Kansas in this one. And then the last game to tie up the wild card weekend, I think it's a good one to finish with. I think it's going to be interesting. It's the Arizona Cardinals at the Los Angeles Rams. Again, we've seen them match up against each other twice already this season. Cards won 37-20 in week 4, then week 14, Rams bounced back and beat them 30-23. So it's another one. It's 1-1. Who's going to take the decider?
Yeah, I think. I mean, I'm not as sold on this one as an exciting game. I must say, a lot of people are. I'm not really. I think it's 2 teams that aren't really going to get much further, whoever goes through. I think that in this particular one, I think the Rams will probably just about have enough, mainly because DeAndre Hopkins is out. I think that's a massive problem for the Cardinals. James Conner and Chase Edmonds have both got injuries. It looks like they're both going to play, but as you said about Najee Harris, it's the same thing. I think it will have a bit of an issue for them. The only thing that puts me off the Rams is Matthew Stafford. He's thrown 8 interceptions in the last 4 games. That's pretty bad. That's a concern, obviously, but I feel like they are just that little bit better than the Cardinals. One thing I noticed, because of DeAndre Hopkins not being there, a lot of the Cardinals game has gone through the run game, with Conner, Edmonds both injured a little bit. Also, the Rams defense, they're ranked 6th against the run. I mean, so they're pretty good against it. And the only bets really that I saw for this game was the Cardinals are ranked 20th against the run, so they're not as good. Sony Michel is likely to get most of the snaps. He's 20-21, but we did see Cam Akers come back in, and you do feel like if he's feeling fitter and they want to put him in there because he's there for the playoff run, he's 15-8 anytime. So if you want one at a little bit of a bigger price, then that's him. Yeah, I think the Rams win. -4 is 10-11. That's another bet that might be worth having a look at. But all in all, I just think the Rams are going to be that little bit stronger.
Yeah, I think a full 18-week season started to take its toll on the Cardinals. We did mention it at the start of the season. It might be their undoing. And they have seemed to have managed to tail off massively over the back end of this season and drop off a little bit. Nice record to finish on, but they've got some missing pieces. They're carrying some injuries. They're a bit beat up, whereas the Rams seem to just get stronger each week. Eric Weddle's apparently coming back and playing. Cam Akers is back. I think Cam Akers coming back is going to be massive for them. Apparently, I was big on him coming out of the draft, and he's saying he's 100%. So they were going to build the team around him until his injury. So I think they want to get him back in there. Sony Michel's done a great job as well. And I just think, Higbee's one of the top tight ends. They're, Jefferson, Beckham, Cup. It will be Stafford that lets it down, won't it? If it is, but he's got all the pieces there. This is the defense is super strong. I still think the Rams are ones to beat in that side of the draw for the playoffs. I think they've got the ability to go all the way still. So yeah, I just think they're a lot healthier than the Cardinals. So I'm sticking with the Rams in this one. I think they're going to edge him out, but I think Kyler Murray will do everything he can not to make that happen.
Yeah, I think the Rams will be strong enough in this game. I really don't feel like that. I think that Stafford's the problem. I think that's enough. I wouldn't go as far to say that it's it's basically the same as having Jared Goff there. I mean, it's not that bad, but it's not great. And I think when it comes to them big time moments, he seems to falter a little bit with it. And this is the problem. Based on the seedings, if the Rams win, unless a small miracle happens here, they're going to be going away to either Green Bay or they're going to be going away to Tampa Bay. And I just don't see them beating either of them.
I think if they go to Tampa, I think they've got chances of beating a beat up Tampa. I think that they're equally as experienced in strength on their teams, and I think, like I say, I think with the missing pieces that they've got in Tampa, I think Rams might have a chance in that one. We've said the Eagles are going up against them at the best time, so imagine the Rams going up against them. I think the Packers is the one you want to avoid. I think they're just the polished article, aren't they, of that side of the draw? So yeah, I think I still think the Rams can do a job.
Okay. No, I'm just not sold on them. I just don't. I think the problem is I don't trust Stafford to do everything right. I don't like the fact that they can be 17 points ahead against the 49ers and then let that go. That at home as well. That's a bit worrying. That sort of makes you feel a little bit like, you know, they can't have thought that they'd won the game, surely, because at 17 points, that's not enough. You know, it feels like it can't have been that they just let that go. So you sort of think to yourself, well, if you haven't let it go, why? What's happened? Something's gone wrong now in order for that to for that sort of thing to happen. So that scares me a little bit with the Rams. But yeah, I think they'll do enough for this one, but I don't see them going much further, I must say.
I think in our little group chat that we've got, you've never been pro Rams. You've always been like, they're trying to buy the league. They're trying to buy.
Well, they are trying to buy the league.
They're just an aggressive team, that's all. But yeah, I know you've got a bit of a chip on your shoulder with them. You were never going to back them, but I think have we only got one upset? Would you call it an upset?
Yeah, there's only one. It's interesting. We've gone for all home games as well, and they are saying it's something that you can see going back through history. It's like having that seeding, being at home, it really does make a difference when it comes to playoff football. Not so much during the season, but certainly in the playoffs. And I think it's no surprise that we've gone down that route. And yeah, the 49ers is the only one that's away. So.
Yeah, so that concludes it. I think it's going to be a great weekend. It's what we all wait for in the season. Best of luck to everybody's teams if you're still in the playoffs. We'll be back in the week for another show to talk about what's happened in these games, see if we were right. And then till next week for another preview show after that. But till then, thank you for joining and see you next week.